I'm Lynn.
I'm Amanda.
And
this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
We're cutting through the fluff and cracking open what it really takes to build a business and life that you actually want.
No gurus, no gatekeeping, just real talk, big action, and the badass energy you need to scale and slay.
Some episodes, it's just us.
And sometimes we bring on powerful guests with stories that'll hit home.
Either way, this is not about playing small.
It's about going all in.
Let's get after it. Hey there, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. Today we're talking about difficult conversations, and not just that, when growth requires those hard conversations. You can't scale your business without having a few of these difficult conversations, these conversations that feel risky, uncomfortable, or sometimes even political. Let's talk about that today.
Yeah, and I would add, not just growth in your business, but growth in yourself. Having difficult conversations, especially with people that you care about, can be daunting. And I know I've had to have this conversation a cajillion times. It is a personal definition of what hard conversations are. Some people feel conflict and
everything.
Hard, yeah, everything. And that a hard conversation is conflict. No, that's an inner conflict of yourself. That doesn't mean that something that can feel a bit of conflict, but if you approach it where it's not conflict, you're going to have a different result. So I think that that's the first thing that I want to talk about is just like, listen, our mindset around having hard conversations helps steer that conversation implicit and explicit way. And so being really mindful of how we view it is super important.
Absolutely. I think back to, back in the old college days, one of my degrees is in leadership and PR basically. However, one course that I took with the Bat Leadership Institute, it was all on dealing with difficult people, difficult conversations. And I remember having to read these books on difficult conversations and being a bit more confrontational in general. I always struggle. I was like, what's the big deal? Why can't you pop some fists? It was something I struggled with, but when it came to conversations that really mattered, I was able to see it in a different way. So sometimes you might have a difficult conversation in one aspect where I can do difficult conversations in my business all day long, but then you have a hard time doing difficult conversations on a personal level or vice versa. I have one of my clients who is fantastic at difficult, hard, emotional conversations on a personal level, but she avoids conflict in everything in her business because she doesn't want to offend people, or she doesn't want to make people, quit because, if I confront them on what they did wrong, then they're going to quit. Having those difficult conversations is going to create, a higher ROI. Your communication is so important. It's going to help you avoid conflict just by having the conversations before it becomes an issue. So there's a lot of things that come, and as Lynn said, there's a lot of mindset around it as well. But you might have struggles in one aspect and not in another. So buckle down. We're going to go over both. Woo!
Yeah. By the way, it sounds like your client is in scarcity mode and has the golden handcuffs. So there's reasons behind why we avoid or we're afraid. And I think it's important to understand those nuances because that helps us deal with the root and not necessarily the surface level. So one of the things that came up for me is, and I know that this could be a sidestep of the conversation, but avoidance. Because sometimes we have avoidance in having the conversations with others and with ourselves, but then we just have sheer avoidance, and avoidance can kill your business. So avoidance of having those conversations, of getting down to the nitty gritty, create this undercurrent of that slowing things down. From that avoidance point, in my opinion, you're building kind of on a shaky or a holy foundation. Even if it was strong before, you start putting holes or shakiness in it. And how that kind of manifests is decisions are being delayed, resentments can start to develop. There could be energy leaks. We start to do our own thing that isn't in alignment with the direction. So there are so many things that the avoidance of the conversation, of the hard conversation or difficult conversation, is killing our strategy. It's definitely slowing our business potential down when we're doing it. And I think this one came up for me because avoidance, even though I'm a direct shooter and I'll have the conversations, actually I'm sure it will come up, but I forget, there have been a few conversations that I've had to lead that Amanda and one of our online managers just sit back on a virtual call and just laugh. And I can remember, as I'm the one like having this hard conversation with a vendor, or when I was in Vegas, and I'll never forget, the kids bring this up all the time. And I was the one who had to go because the furniture wasn't coming in that my ex-husband had ordered. And I had to go to the furniture store, and all the kids got in the car to come and watch me have this conversation with them. So I don't have a problem having the conversation, but I do have the head in the sand thing that I've learned from my upbringing. And so sometimes I can put my head in the sand and what that is avoidance. And it's a learned thing from my childhood. And I have to catch myself because it will come up. And I know that it hurts our business. It hurts me. It hurts a relationship. It hurts, because it's not just, with Amanda and I, like the avoidance is something that I've done for my whole life, I feel like. And so I have to call myself out on that. So that's why I put this one first, because why not call myself out on something that I know that is like a kind of an underlining habit that I've had my whole life that I'll correct, and then I can easily fall back into it.
Yes. We're coming off of the holidays, and what I love about this is I always think of a few of my clients, and I love you, and I just coached you through this, so I'm going to call you out on the podcast. This is why conversations matter. They avoided all year. They avoided small things that certain employees were doing. They would show up late. They would, they were not really doing what was company culture, company policy. They were taking longer breaks. They were doing all these like small things that were never addressed. And then we come up on this team performance evaluation at the end of the year, and they just want to go crazy on them. I'm like, you can't say that you have a problem with something they did 11 and a half months ago. You needed to say it 11 and a half months ago and write it down and document it. And then it wouldn't have been a problem, but now it's escalated to this point where they like resent seeing this employee. And every time the employee does anything, even if it's the most minute thing, like they spent 2 extra minutes in the bathroom, suddenly they hate them. And they're like, she did it on purpose. She knows that she hasn't been at her desk. Like, and I love you. And my client's probably cringing. I love you. And you did this to yourself. That these conversations matter, and the things they seem awkward and weird, like, oh, I don't want to bring this up. Like, it's such a, like, oh, but there's these boundaries you need to set. And it happens even with problem clients. Like, you have these boundaries that you've set, or the scope that you've given for a project, and they keep testing it. And then by the end of the year, they're way overstepping it because you never put your foot down in the first place. But at that point, it's almost too late. So these conversations matter because it can escalate in ways, and it can creep up, and there's all this leadership misalignment and like, company culture clashes and cash flow issues and like sanity issues. So, and personal boundary issues. So it really does, if you can nip it in the bud early, it will make a difference. Even in a personal relationship, if your spouse comes home late and you tell them you don't like that after the first time, and then it doesn't happen again, great. If you don't say it and you just kind of seethe on it, and then 6 months later, they're still doing it and they never knew that it was bothering you, and then you're divorced. I mean, of course, that's an exaggerated conversation. I'm obviously not married.
It happens.
It happens. So these little things, if you can address them early, even if it feels slightly uncomfortable, it will help clean the way and clarify expectations, roles, boundaries, everything, and save you a lot of headache later down the line. And I mean, performance issues, like the team evaluations, this is the time of year that I always think about that. Every time you avoided a conversation, it comes up in the evaluation in ways that you can't really address, because how can you get mad at somebody for something they did 6 months ago that you never told them was a problem? That's on you, boo. That's on you.
Absolutely. And I feel like we can talk about the avoidance part the whole hour, but I will say that growth, when you're growing, so we're talking about having hard conversations during growth, and when you're growing, it really uncovers more. So scaling can create some problems, but it exposes the ones that are already there. So usually if there's problems already there, it's exposing it. It's not necessarily creating new ones. I mean, it can, but in a different way. And so, because again, you're building on a shaky foundation. And so when you're trying to grow, on a tiny, something that has a bunch of holes in it, it's just, you're going to see the cracks. It's going to happen. So when you're trying to grow, I see this all the time too, working with founders, right? So when they come at a point where, like, ones that are funded, well funded, like startup, like type of VC type of people, but even in non-funded, but when they're at that next growth period, like there's a lot of shit. It's kind of like getting married to fix the problems. You don't get married to fix the problems get worse. You have
Having a kid to fix the problem.
Oh man, you have to have the conversation. And so, like, seeing founders at these like different levels where they're getting funding or they're advocating for funding, etc. And like, the house is messy. Like, and this is the term that I use, your house is a mess. Like, you need to clean up house before you go into this next level, because it's only going to amplify those problems. It's only going to cause more misalignment because more ego is involved. There's more at stake. And so that you have to have the conversation. Otherwise, it could potentially completely blow up. Or it's just so much more headache. And again, you are preventing yourself from growing at the pace that you can because you're not cleaning up house. And sometimes that's hard. It is hard, but out of the box, instead of asking what's wrong, you need to ask, like, what's no longer sustainable. So a lot of times we like to say that it's wrong when we're looking at this, when it exposes these problems. But instead of saying what's wrong, like asking ourselves, okay, what's wrong? Or when I talk to the founders, this is what's wrong. I often use, okay, what is no longer sustainable? What will not allow you to scale in the way that you want to scale? So trying to not blame, but to take responsibility and kind of have discernment with the conversations that need to be had.
Absolutely. And we talk all the time that we are very solution oriented. And this is about being solution oriented, not punishing or pointing out flaws here. This is just being solution oriented, because growth really is a mirror, and it's going to reflect the chaos if you don't make the adjustments necessary. And that's where those hard conversations come in as a growth tool to help you make those aligned approaches. So, some tips on, I just want to give some tips on how to approach hard conversations, because I know that it is difficult for a lot of people. But I think one of the things that Lynn really excels at is that she does not sugarcoat. When she goes into a hard conversation, there's no sugarcoating. It's very clear. It's very respectful. And it's focusing always on solutions and outcomes, not on the emotions that are going on. Or, sometimes
I get heated.
Sometimes there's emotion. I was just going to say, sometimes there's emotions that,
oh boy,
it comes out, but you don't start that way.
No.
You always start very respectful. You always start with the facts, and then it escalates, which is where it's very exciting to watch. However, it usually doesn't start with the emotions. It doesn't start without, you're focusing on solutions. You're focusing on the outcomes. You're not thinking. So when you're thinking about, when you are preparing for a conversation, make sure you know the facts, actually know the limits. That's why I say when it comes to performance evaluations, have a list of, these are the dates in the past that we talked about it, and this is why this is wrong. And this is, where's the solution to this? This isn't sustainable. What's the desired result that you're looking for? What conversations were had in the past? And you want to stay aligned in that vision rather than negotiating your core principles or negotiating your values. That's not on the table here. And also, timing really, 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 really matters.
Oh, it does.
The sooner, the better. If there's a problem, address it individually, immediately. If you want to praise people, praise them in front of everybody as many times as you want over the course of months if you want. But if there's a problem or something that is not sustainable, something that you need to fix, it has to happen quickly, and it needs to happen on a one-to-one conversation, because the more you delay it, the more tension there's going to be on one or both sides.
Yeah. Instantly I think of a situation where it cost me over $100,000 to wait to have that conversation. And so frustrating. So frustrating. Literally, I'm not exaggerating, over $100,000. It was in a sale of one of my businesses. And so I waited to have a conversation and relied on the contract, and they screwed me. Anywho, timing is super important to have those difficult conversations. And you talked about earlier, nip it in the bud. You can't hold that regret or that resentment I mean, you can, but it's not healthy, and it's definitely keeping you from growing. Yeah. I also think like another thing, and you kind of tapped into this, but I want to bring it, you talked about holding back the emotions, like not, but also like taking the personal out of it, like not the you, the me, this is what happened, this is where we agreed on, like, what's the resolution, right?
Very objective, using that
Yeah.
objective terminology and language, direct. There's
Correct.
no like, you did this, you suck. It's here's what's
Correct.
happening.
Correct. And also, emotionally regulating yourself. I'm not going to say that there aren't times where my body
That's
gets
tough.
flushed having these conversations, but being able to like sink in and like, and especially the heated ones, and to be clever, but not clever in a manipulative way unless it's called for, but like when we're stable, and I think that also, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but like prepping for it before you go into that conversation and grounding yourself is really going to be an asset. And I think we did a podcast already on how to have difficult conversations. So some of this you can review in that as well. I know we're going over some high level points, but grounding ourselves before, and then having that emotional regulation, that grounding when we're in it as well, but also staying in that objective language and objective thought, like objective thought.
Absolutely. And that's why I often will use someone that's trusted, like Lynn, for example, where if you need to get it out and you're so furiously frustrated, like get it out before you have the actual conversation. Like be psycho crazy to someone who's trusted and then pull it back and don't actually say that to the person in the meeting that you're having. Because I've had my own personal things where I'm having these conversations and I look cool as a cucumber, but you start to see these like red flames come up my neck and I'm so like holding it in and I'm like, yep, everything's fine. I'm just going to be objective. But really it helps sometimes if you have a bit of a fiery personality to get some of that fire out before you actually have to see them. And to set really clear boundaries and expectations. This is the scope, this is the deadline, this was the compensation, this is what the contract says, this is what we have noted in this email on this date. So the more analytical you can be, the less emotional it feels, because again, it's more of an objective language, declarative language statements. Here's what's happening, we're doing this is what was stated on this email. So it becomes very almost clinical in a lot of ways rather than emotional.
Yeah.
And
bullet point.
And you want to follow up with a conversation, follow up again. We don't need to just end it with anger and then never follow up again, because if you're not having that conversation without future accountability, then it was kind of a wasted conversation. So it shouldn't just be like, this is what needs to happen and these are the expectations I have, and then there's nothing that happens after that. We want to make sure there's some kind of accountability and a follow up. Otherwise, what the heck was the point?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the, also don't make threats when you're having the conversation or give ultimatums that you're not willing to like hold accountable. And I think of like parenting nowadays, or it's not just nowadays, it was back.
That's what I thought of.
Yeah, parenting. You better do this, or I'm going to take away this, or I'm going to do this, and that never happens. You're training your kid that you're not a person of your word. That's a whole other topic, but this happens a lot with difficult conversations. You're putting these ultimatums or you're putting these demands. It's like it almost is like one scale or the other. It's too loosey goosey and too soft, or it's too like super intense but you don't have the follow through and the follow up with it. So it's really important to have during that conversation. And again, I think that's why it's important to practice and kind of understand the outcomes that you would want. Like, I can remember having one particular conversation with two strategic alliances that I had at the same time, who were, we'll say, mimicking some of my stuff a little too obviously. And I knew that the outcome could be one of a couple of things. Like I wasn't super set on that particular outcome. And that helped me definitely navigate that conversation. Listen, at the end of the day, and this is where, and I know we say this a lot, but it's truth. Having hard conversations is not a personality trait. It's not a behavioral style. It can be more difficult for some to have it, but even those that maybe it's easier for them to have it, it might not necessarily mean that they're doing it well, right? So they might have the the I don't give a shit attitude and the like, I'll have any conversation and they will, but it's not necessarily correct, if that makes sense.
Productive.
Yeah. Or like there's no reason for it, right? That, yeah, I can do it and they do it, but there's not really a reason to have a hard conversation. So it's a skill though. So it's not a personality, it's a skill. It's a muscle you have to build. It's learned. It can be practiced. And again, I just want to say difficult conversations doesn't mean that you're an asshole. It shouldn't come from ego either. Really. I mean, a lot do when you're with the team, the business, etc. Like on your personal note, do you, boo? But it is something, it's a skill that is learned. You learn to get clarity and how to get clarity. Directness in this manner can be practiced to have these conversations, the hard, difficult conversations.
And listen, we've said this before. I'm sure you've heard it on Instagram or 1,000 quotes that entrepreneurship means you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So stop avoiding the discomfort of an awkward conversation, because if you're really serious about scaling, this isn't about more drama in your life. This is about unlocking a growth potential. Like, you can't fear conflict. There's going to be conflict. And if there isn't any conflict, I question whether or not you're growing at a rate that's, worth your time. Because if there's never any conflict in anything that you do, then you're not pushing, you're not trying, somebody's taking advantage of you. But ultimately, there have to be difficult conversations or awkward conversations, whatever adjective you want to use to describe them. But you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And this is just part of being an entrepreneur, that you're going to have those conversations, and that's going to make you a better leader, and it's going to make your team stronger no matter what, as long as you are doing them well.
Yeah. Something popped up when you were talking too, is that I think as much as it is a skill to learn how to have hard conversations, to direct them, to be the one initiating it, I think practicing receiving, like being in it, not the one initiating it, is going to help you as well. And you can ask, listen, I need you to tell me about myself, or like, I need you to be brutally honest, and find somebody who's not your yes person to have those hard conversations with you, to be able to, because when you can feel it from the other side, it does give you a way to not balance, but to really navigate those conversations as well. And I think it knocks you off of your pedestal that you're on as well. So, which means that you can come at the conversation from a different angle.
Absolutely. So we want to know, when is the last time you had a difficult conversation, and how did you handle it? How do you feel about having these important, necessary, awkward, important, difficult conversations in your business?
Yeah. If you need help, hit us up. We can either help you in the questions and have another podcast on difficult conversations. We can have a one-on-one with you. We do coaching as well as the Badass Amplifier. So hit us up. We'll be happy to help you. This is something, obviously, we talk about things that we're good at that we like to do. And not always. We don't always like to do everything that we talk about, but they're necessary assets in our business and in our life. So hit us up.
All right. Until next time.
Get after it. Thanks for tuning in. But remember, listening is not doing.
Take what you heard today and move.
Share the episode, leave us a review, and tag us when you take action.
Head over to the pursuitofbadasserie.com and see how we're helping entrepreneurs get results without the fluff.
Until next time,
let's get after it.